Hello there, this is the guider. In this tutorial I will show you how to create that intro you saw at the start of this video. So we will start with stage 1, which is preparing our scene. The first thing we need to do is import our text or our logo. After that, what we need to do is convert any mesh we have in our scene into a curve object, because our trail effect only works with curve objects. So just for demonstration, I will show you how to convert a mesh cube into a curve. The first thing you need to know is that our cube is a mesh, and this green triangle icon indicates that. The other green curve icon indicates that this object here is a curve. So we want our cube to be in this curve state. The first thing you need to do is press tab to go to edit mode, select the entire mesh, press X, delete only faces. After that, go to object mode and then press F3. Type in convert to curve from mesh/text. So now our cube is a curve, and you can see that there is a curves properties menu here. Click on it, and I would suggest that you turn up the resolution all the way to 64. That way our animations later on will look much more smoother. So now I'm done with my demonstration cube. I will delete it and we will start with stage 2. So now in stage 2, what we need to do is we are going to create the trail or the base trail for our intro without animating it or anything. So the first thing you need to do is go to add mesh cylinder, then expand this menu, radius turn it down to maybe 0.01 or 0.005. However, depth must be the radius value multiplied by 2. So for me it should be 0.01 because that is the double value of our radius value here. Then what you need to do is rotate by 90 degrees on the y-axis. After that, once you have your cylinder finished, go to object, apply all transforms. Then go to our modifier properties menu, add an array modifier, and then if I crank up the count, you can see that the array only works on the x-axis. We want it to follow the curve here, so add a curve modifier, click on this icon and then select your curve. Now our array follows the curve quite well, but if you exceed a certain value it will just go in a straight line like that. To prevent that, make sure you stop right before the end of your curve here. So for me it is this point here. So make sure the value or the count value is set right before the curve end point. So make sure you also do the same to all of these segments. If you have a text, make sure you do all this effect to your letters. So now what we need to do is go to edit mode, check these two icons, and then make sure that your corners are smooth enough. For me they aren't. You can see that it has a bit of a sharp angle here. To fix that, it's quite simple. Just Ctrl R, add 2 or 3 segments there. For me I'll add 3 just to be safe. You can also add 2 if you want. So now what we need to do in stage 3 is animate our trace here. However, the first thing we need to do is move all the curves into a separate collection. So select them in the outliner, press M, new collection, name it curves, just to keep our scene easier to navigate. Then hide your curves, at least for now, we don't need them now. Then drag this section up. If you have your timeline, just keep it that way. If you don't, click on this icon, select timeline. After that, what we need to do is select one of our traces. I would suggest that you select the main object in your scene just to start up with it. Then press backslash to isolate it. After that, go to the frame you want your animation to stop. For me it is 190, and make sure the count is set at the perfect amount as I explained in the previous stage. Then what we need to do is press I while we hover on top of the count here. Go back to frame number 3 or 4, maybe 3, and turn down the count all the way to 1. Press I to add a keyframe. However, you can see that even when our animation is not starting, it's our trace or our trail is still visible. We want to hide it for at least 1 frame. To do that, go back to frame number 2, select your trace here, go to this square icon, go to visibility, and then hide it on the viewport and in the renders. Then make sure you click on these white vertices or points, icons, whatever you want to call them, or if you want, just hover on top of these checkboxes and press I to add a keyframe. Then move it 1 frame to the right and check these 2 checkboxes and make sure you add a keyframe as well. So if I press play, you can see that our animation starts. Well, but we want to add a bit more variation to the speed of our animation. To do that, what we need to do is maybe go back to our modifier properties here, then select a keyframe you want your animation, you want to change the speed of your animation at. For me, maybe it's 40. So what I want to do now is just increase the count a bit, and then once I do that, this is quite important, make sure you press I while you hover on top of the value box. And then I will do the same to the other sections here, but for example, if I want to slow it down, just go to a keyframe and decrease the value. That way you will slow down your animation. Press I, add a keyframe, and then finally what I am going to do now is slow this part down and press I. So if I play the animation now, you can see it starts up quite quickly or fast and then slows down as it goes. Then now I don't want it to speed up that way, or at least maybe move this one back a bit, just like that. Let's see. Well, that looks okay for now. Make sure you press backslash again and add all of these animations, or do the same to the other traces here. So now in stage 4, what we are going to create is this sphere or this energy ball type of thing, just to make our animation a bit more interesting and a bit more appealing. So this animation is basically just an energy ball creating our trail. I will show you how to do that now. So I will open my scene without the ball, and let's start by adding a mesh UV sphere. Then turn down the segments to 16 and the rings to 8 and the radius to 0.01 or 0.005. Just choose whichever radius you want. Then go to Object, Apply all transforms. After that, what we need to do is go to our Constraints tab here, add a Follow Path constraint, and then click on this icon, select your curve here. So now you can see that after I did that, our ball is stationed or located at the start point of my curve here. So now what we need to do is go back to frame 1, or maybe to the frame in which our animation starts. So for me it is frame 3. Then hover on top of the offset here and press I to add a keyframe. After that, play the animation and stop it right before any major turning point. For me it is this one right there, so stop it right there and then change the offset value until the sphere or the energy ball is located right above our trace tip, right there, about there. So right about there, and then make sure you press I once you find your value. Do the same to the other major turning point, so this one, and then animate our ball once again and stop it right about there. Press I to add a keyframe, play the animation once again, and then move the ball, stop it right about there. Press I to add a keyframe, and then finally just take it to the end point of our trail animation. This is our final keyframe. So if I play the animation, you can see that the ball does not follow the trail perfectly, or at least at the start. To fix that, it's quite simple. Select all of your keyframes for the ball here, then right click, interpolation mode, select linear. So now if I press play, you can see that the ball syncs perfectly with the trail here. This is what we want, and I'll leave you to do the same to all of the other traces, which is quite simple. Just repeat what you did to this curve and then come back to the other stage, which is stage 5, which is creating an electricity like waves or wiggling. Yes, that's the word. So wiggling or electricity waves across our trail here. So see you soon. So now in stage 5, what we are going to create is a wave effect or an electricity wave effect across our trace or our trail here. So the first thing we need to do is go to add empty sphere, then scale down the radius to 0.05, and then go to object, apply all transforms, then press F2 and rename it wiggle or waves. For me, I'll call it waves. Then what we need to do now is press N, go to item, hover on top of location here, and then press I to add a keyframe. Maybe move our keyframe back to the start of the animation. Then what we need to do is click on this icon, go to graph editor, maybe hide this panel by pressing N, and now click on this white arrow to expand this list. Select X location and then press N here. Go to modifier, add a noise modifier. Then what we need to do now is turn down the strength back to 0.4. Then if I play the animation, you can see that our empty just goes back and forth on the x-axis. That's what we want. So now go back to our timeline. We don't need the graph editor anymore. Then select our trace here, for example, and then go to our modifier properties, minimize these two modifiers, and then add a displace modifier. Turn down the strength to 0.007. Then what we need to do now is change the direction from normal to RGB to XYZ. After that, click on new to add a new texture. Then rename it as maybe texture 1 or just 01. Change the texture coordinate from local to object and click on this object, or click on this icon and select our empty that we created. After that, click on this icon to go to our texture settings. Change it from image or movie to clouds, and then change color from gray scale to color. Then change the size from 0.25 to 2 and the depth to 20. Click on this panel, colors, and change the contrast to 2. After that, go back to our modifier, click on copy to duplicate it, then click on this number 2 icon, or maybe whatever number you have here, just to duplicate our texture as well, to rename it as 02 and keep everything as it is for now. and click on this icon. What we need to change now is turn down the size to 0.1, and maybe that's all we need to do. Go back to our panel here. I think that's all we have to do now. Just minimize them, and if I play the animation, you can see that there is a wiggling wave effect across my trees here. So basically what you need to do is apply all of these two modifiers into these segments or these trails. So now in the final stage, what we need to do is first of all, let's add a camera, then press N, go to view, and then check this lock camera to view checkbox. Then after that, press 0 on your numpad, zoom out, select one of your objects, and then press view here, and then select frame selected. After that, what we need to do is select our camera. We need to animate it a bit, so go to this camera panel and then click on this icon to drop these two options. Then go to frame 1 and turn up the size value until you like the distance from your camera to the object. Once you do that, press I while hovering on top of this value box to add a keyframe to it. After that, move to maybe 5 or 10 frames behind our end point of the animation and make it turn down the value here until our model is almost touching the borders from one side or from this side either. Make sure you press I as well to add a keyframe to that as well. So now we need to add a bit of rotating animation to our camera. So press I, select rotation, then go back to frame 1, rotate the camera a bit, don't overdo it, just a bit like that, maybe to this side. Choose whatever amount you want, and then once you finally choose an angle, press I, then rotation once again. Now we want to add a bit of shaking to our camera, so to do that, go to Shift X and Y, press I on both, and then right click here, vertical split, and then hold Control and click to split our view here. Select Graph Editor and then click on this white arrow, select Shift X, then press N to bring this panel out, and then press Modifier, add a noise modifier. So the scale should be 5 and the strength should be 0.005. So if I play the animation, you can see that our camera shakes a bit on the X-axis. We want to do that to the Y-axis as well, so it's quite easy. Just click on this icon, then click on Shift Y and click on the other icon to paste the same modifier to our Y axis. So now we are done with the graph editor. Go to our shading tab or shader editor, and now we are going to create the material for our trace. So select our object, press new, and then name it glow. Once you do that, shift spacebar to maximize our shader tab here, and then delete the BSDF node, press Shift A, search emission shader, move it down, and then Shift A again, transparent or transparency shader, move it up. And if you have the node wrangler, you can just easily mix these two. So Shift Control, click on this one, and then Shift Control, right click, drag to this one to mix them. If you don't have the node wrangler add-on, you can easily activate it by going to Edit Preference, then under Add-ons, search for Node, and you can see it here at the bottom. Just check this checkbox and you are good to go. So now what we need to do is turn up the factor all the way to 1, go back to our global view, go back to frame 1, then zoom in here, make sure the strength is set to 0, maybe go to frame 2, and set the strength value to 0 and press I to add a keyframe to that value. Then go to maybe frame 190, which is the end frame of my animation, and turn up, or maybe go just to frame 10 and turn up the value to 100, press I to add a keyframe. And now what we need to do is change the color. For me, I already have one set, but if you want, just choose whatever color you want. So the color I'm using is a light blue color, which has the code 3FBBFF. Now we are set. What we need to do now is go to our render properties and change to Eevee, choose bloom, and I think that's all we need to do. So if I render my animation, you can see that there is a beautiful glow effect. You can also animate your color if you want. So go to frame 1, press I on the color box here to add a keyframe, then move to frame 80 maybe and change it to a darker blue color, and press I after you do that. Go to 160, maybe let's change it to a much, or a bit more purplish blue color like this one, and then press I. So now you can see that the color changes slowly with time. So if I move it, you can see that it becomes a bit more purple. Now we need to apply our material to all the other meshes here. So select all of these objects and then hold shift and left click on this trace, or the one that has our material. And what we need to do now is press Ctrl L, make sure the one that has the material is active, and then choose Ctrl L materials. So if I play the animation now, you can see that all of our traces have the material, which is what we want. I think I will create a separate tutorial on creating or adding that volumetric background, because it will take us a bit of time, or maybe I'll make a short tutorial following this one. So see you soon, and make sure you experiment with your logo effect, whatever you are creating. Have a nice day.